time for some more fun with LEDs. I'm going to call this GUI the LED Command Center because on the breadboard I have 8 LEDs wired up to the Raspberry Pi, and I can control whether each of those LEDs is on or off by entering a string into this text box of ones and zeros. For instance, everywhere there is a 1, that LED will be on, and everywhere there is a 0, that LED will be off. So if I enter alternate ones and zeros and load that code, we can see on the breadboard that the LEDs have lit up in an alternate fashion. So we could turn half on and half off very easily with 1, 1, 1, 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, and we can see that this half of the LEDs are lit. So let's have a look at how this is done. Over in the script, we've got the imports that we've seen before, and we are using GPIO this time. And then we're creating a bunch of LED objects, and these are just the pins that I've attached each LED to. And after those LED objects are made, I'm arranging them into a list with this notation. So this list is called LEDs. After we create the GUI window, we've seen that before, we create an LED code variable, which is a string var. This is the variable that's coming from our text box here. So let's see how that text box is created. That's one that we haven't seen before. We've got the button, we've got the exit button, but this is the text box, and this is a widget called entry. So when you have an entry box, that is something that you can use to enter in a string. Now there's no variable associated with this, so we're going to have to dig a little bit deeper to find out how that code is extracted. Now this load LED code button is what drives the whole show, right? So that is connected to a command called LED show, and that's in fact really the only event function that we have here. So we have LED show, and what we're doing is running code.get. So because we have code as the text box entry object, we can just perform a get on that straight away. We don't need a variable for it. In fact, we create the variable here, for instance. Once we have that variable, we just print it straight back out into the shell. We just print LED code, and then we print the code that was entered. And you can see that I've been playing around and we've got a few LED codes stacked up in the shell. Now this is where the program is actually doing its decision making. We want to step through that LED code string and check whether that character is a 1 or not a 1, in this case 0. I've chosen not a 1 so that we don't have as many errors. So what we do here is we first create a loop counter and set that to 0. That's essentially our LED number. Remember, the 0th element of a list is the first entry into that list. So we index from 0. So we create a loop counter, and then we have a for loop, and we say for C in LED code. So because LED code is a string, that means that C is going to be a character. So this means for every character in this string. And what we're going to do is we're going to check if that character is equal to 1. If it is, then we turn an LED on somehow. And this is where the power of this list has come into play. Where we would normally be able, let's say we wanted to turn LED 7 on, so we would type LED 7.on. But now, because we have a list of these LED objects, we can say LEDs, and then we access that index, which is the ith index. That's our loop counter, and we're setting that to on. So using this notation, we can essentially substitute LEDs for the ith entry. That is here LED 7. So this is like saying LED 7.on while ever I is 0. Now, if that character is not a 1, I'm just saying else, then we turn that corresponding LED off. And then we increment our loop counter. So we have the for loop automatically stepping through the string, and we have our loop counter matching its position and toggling that LED based off the value of that character. Now, the astute amongst you will have noticed that I'm only doing an else statement. So instead, I could say A, B, C, D, 1, 1, 1, 1, and I will still get half the LEDs lit because we're comparing to 1 and not 1. We're not necessarily comparing for a 0. But this is just maybe a cute demonstration of how you can use a text entry box to pass in more complicated information. Like if you want to issue, say, a text command, if you've built a GUI that runs off text commands, this is perhaps a neat way that you could experiment with using a text box.